The day the news hit, I was sitting in the squad room nursing my third cup of coffee. The station buzzed with its usual chaos, phones ringing, chatter, the occasional burst of laughter from a rookie who hadn't yet been weighed down by the gravity of the job. My partner, Laura Kane, had just finished berating a suspect who tried to lie about his alibi when the call came in. Prison break at Ridgemont. Inmates gone without a trace, the voice crackled through the radio. Ridgemont. A high-security facility with more cameras than a Vegas casino. If someone managed to disappear from there, it wasn't luck, it was precision. Who's the lucky contestant? I asked as Laura and I headed for the car. Evan Mercer, came the reply. Mercer. Convicted of orchestrating a Ponzi scheme that bilked millions from retirees, charities, and pretty much anyone who trusted him. He'd been sentenced to 25 years, a slap on the wrist considering the devastation he'd caused. But Mercer wasn't your typical criminal. He was meticulous, a chess player in a world full of checkers enthusiasts. The drive to Ridgemont took less than 20 minutes, but the questions in my head multiplied with every mile. When we arrived, the warden, a wiry man with a permanent scowl named Harrington, met us at the gates. Detective Carter, Detective Kane, he greeted us curtly. You'll want to see this. Harrington led us to the security room, where a wall of monitors displayed feeds from every corner of the prison. He played back footage from the night before. There, on the grainy screen, Mercer walked into the infirmary. An hour later, another man walked out in his place, same build, same stride, wearing Mercer's prison jumpsuit. The real Mercer never reappeared. Who's the guy? Laura asked, leaning closer to the screen. Eric Vaughn, Harrington replied. A maintenance worker. Found unconscious in a supply closet. Clothes stolen, ID gone. Mercer must have switched with him somehow. It was bold, even for someone like Mercer. But the more I thought about it, the less it surprised me. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment gamble. It was a strategy. Vaughn was a pawn, a piece Mercer sacrificed to move himself closer to the king's side of the board. How long until anyone noticed Mercer was gone? I asked. 6 hours, Harrington admitted, his scowl deepening. The infirmary's understaffed at night, and Vaughn's face wasn't in the system. By the time we figured it out, he had a head start. A 6-hour lead was a lifetime. Mercer could be anywhere by now. But I had a feeling he wasn't far. The man loved control too much to leave everything to chance. Back at the station, we started digging into Mercer's life, known associates, financial records, even his reading habits. The guy didn't just play chess, he read books on strategy, deception, and the psychology of trust. It was like trying to catch a ghost who left fingerprints on purpose. Then came the twist that turned the case on its head. 2 days into the investigation, a note appeared on my desk. No envelope, no fingerprints, just a single sheet of paper folded neatly in half. The handwriting was smooth, deliberate. It read, "You're looking for me in all the wrong places." I didn't tell anyone about the note, not even Laura. It wasn't fear, it was instinct. Something about this felt personal, like Mercer was playing a game just for me. And he wasn't wrong. I'd been combing through the external, routes he might have taken, people he might have contacted. But the note made me reconsider. What if Mercer hadn't gone far at all? What if he was hiding in plain sight? That's when I started looking closer at the people around me. The janitor who suddenly seemed more interested in our conversations than his mop. The IT guy who avoided eye contact whenever I passed. Even the rookie cop who laughed a little too hard at jokes that weren't funny. Every interaction became a question mark. Who were they, really? Could Mercer be one of them? Laura noticed my unease. "You're jumpy," she said one night as we worked late. "What's going on?" I hesitated, then slid the note across the desk. Her eyes scanned it, her brow furrowing. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" she asked. "Didn't want to spook anyone," I replied. "If Mercer's close, he's watching. The moment he senses we're onto him, he'll disappear for good." She nodded, but her expression told me she wasn't convinced. Laura and I had been partners for years, and trust wasn't something we took lightly. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that telling her everything might tip Mercer off if he wasn't already listening. The next day, I reviewed the security footage from the station. It was a long shot, but I had to know if anyone had slipped in or out unnoticed. That's when I spotted it, a figure entering the building at 4 a.m., wearing a uniform that didn't quite fit. The face was obscured by a low hat, but the build, the gait, it was familiar. Too familiar. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. If Mercer was here, if he was this close, then every interaction, every conversation I'd had in the past few days was suspect. And the worst part? I had no idea who I could trust. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every shadow seemed to creep closer, every sound a whispered taunt. I replayed the security footage over and over, trying to catch a detail I'd missed, a giveaway that might confirm Mercer's identity. But the image was grainy, and his disguise was flawless. Mercer had always been a master of blending in, of wearing a mask so convincingly that even those who knew him couldn't tell the difference. By morning, my exhaustion had turned to resolve. If Mercer wanted me to play his game, I'd play, but on my terms. The first step was setting a trap. I started with Laura, bringing her in on my plan. If Mercer was hiding among us, we needed to make him slip up, force him to show his hand. "Let's create some noise," I said. "Announce we've got a lead on his whereabouts. Something big enough to make him nervous." Laura raised an eyebrow. "You think he'll take the bait?" "I think he's watching us. Listening. If we make him believe we're close to catching him, he might panic." Laura nodded, her confidence in me unshaken despite the absurdity of the plan. By noon, the station was buzzing with our fabricated lead. Word spread fast. Mercer had been spotted at a motel on the outskirts of town. Officers were dispatched, sirens blaring, though I knew they'd come back empty-handed. It was all for show, a performance designed for an audience of one. That evening, as the station quieted down, I waited. I pretended to be buried in paperwork, my office dimly lit, the door slightly ajar. Laura was stationed in the observation room, monitoring the security feeds. The trap was set, and all we needed now was for Mercer to make his move. And he did. It was subtle at first, a shadow passing outside my door, lingering just a second too long. Then came the soft creak of floorboards, the sound of someone trying too hard to be silent. My heart raced as I kept my eyes on the paperwork, acting oblivious. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. I could feel his presence. "Long night, detective?" The voice was smooth, measured, and unmistakable. I looked up slowly, masking my surprise. There he stood, wearing the uniform of one of the night janitors. The disguise was good, the posture, the demeanor, but the eyes gave him away. Mercer's eyes were sharp, calculating, alive with the thrill of the game. "Mercer," I said calmly, leaning back in my chair. "Took you long enough." His smirk faltered, just for a second, before returning in full force. "You always were the sharp one, Thorne. That's why I chose you." "Chose me?" I repeated, buying time as my hand hovered near the panic button under the desk. "For what?" "Your little game?" "Not just a game," he said, stepping closer. "A masterpiece. You've been chasing shadows while I've been right under your nose. I needed to see if you were as good as they said." "And?" I asked, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. His grin widened. "You didn't disappoint." Before he could take another step, I pressed the button. Alarms blared, red lights flashing throughout the station. Mercer's expression shifted from smug to furious in an instant. "Checkmate," I said, standing. He lunged, but I was ready. Years of training kicked in as I dodged his attack, grabbing his arm and twisting it behind his back. He struggled, but the fight was brief. Within seconds, Laura burst in with 2 officers, guns drawn. "Game's over, Mercer," she said, her voice cold. As they cuffed him, He looked at me, his smirk returning despite the situation. You think this is over, detective? You're still playing my game. You just don't know it yet. Later, as I watched him being escorted to a reinforced cell, Laura joined me, her arms crossed. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said, though I wasn't sure it was true. Mercer's words echoed in my mind, a reminder that even in defeat, he was still dangerous. Still scheming. But for now, he was behind bars. And I was determined to stay one step ahead, no matter what game he tried to play next.